Hey everyone, this is the second part of last week's episode. If you didn't hear it, hit pause, go back a week to catch up.
And this was it this? I think it was this Father's Day, this June. My dad passed in 2016, and you had mentioned this earlier. There's this season that when you're in this season, it's like they're like for you, your mom, like they're my mom, but they're not my mom, but they are my mom. But
yes,
and so I went through that, and it's so hard. And so that was 2016 when he passed, December 2016. And this summer, June 2024, it was this real epiphany for me where I was like, I'm not going to remember him with vascular dementia anymore.
right, yeah.
But I remember too, I was like, but he's also not just my dad, because now I'm watching my son become a young man, and I'm, watching my husband, and I had made like a social media post because I was like, he's not my sick dad anymore.
Right.
This was somebody's son. This is a college athlete. This is a man who fell in love and started a family.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, that's how long it took me to fully transition back to, I've decided who this person's going to be in my life.
Right? Hi everyone, I'm Lexie Callies. Do you feel the squeeze of caring for an elderly loved one and school-aged children? Then welcome to the Sandwich Stories. Let's dig in.
I know. Yeah, it's the same thing. So my husband is so good with that too. And I always say I lucked out. I won the lotto. I always say he was my frog prince.
Yeah.
That I kissed all the frogs. And then I finally found him. Poof, here he is. Everything's great. And he's so good about it too, because he is always making sure, because I don't know if you were this way or if you are this way, that I'm not, when I'm in it, and I'm not the best about taking care of myself or worrying about myself. I worry about everybody else around me, and I'm the last person on the list. And so he is constantly like, you need to go, hey, you need to go out with girls. Like, you need to like call them, or, I personally love, like, birthdays for me means I get my best friends together and I take them out for dinner.
Oh, I love it.
I'm not the person that needs them to take me to dinner. Part of that is a little because I'm selfish and I want to go where I want to go. So it's like, I got to pick it. Yeah. I'm going to take you all out.
I like it.
And so he's always good about that, because I have one friend and she says, oh, my husband would never let me do this. And I said, well, first of all, my husband doesn't let me.
Yeah.
My husband and I discuss things, and we come to like a decision as to what works in that moment in our life, and money wise or whatever it is. And so it could be, hey, I'm taking 6 of my friends out to this one restaurant, and it's anything and everything everybody wants. No limits, and I pay for it. And so, and he gets on board with that because he knows that's what's going to recharge me.
Yeah.
And so I think, like it sounds like your husband's very similar. Like, and he's, I've been away, and I had a horrible migraine one time, and my mom called me, and she wasn't understanding that I was not feeling well.
Yeah.
And so I was like, can you please go over there? And he said when he came back that she was almost surprised, like, well, why didn't Lexie show up?
Yeah.
I was like, well, she doesn't feel well. Today was not a good day. She's in bed with a migraine. We're done. And so I said, I know this is not your job. This is not your mom. And I was like, but could you please make sure you get all her laundry and bring it, and I will take care of it. But it's like, he's like, yeah, sure, I can do that, and not a problem. And she might have had an incident at night where it might have been, soiled sheets or whatever it is. And I was like, I know it's not something you want to go pick up and bring home, but, and he's like, yeah, no problem. I can do that too.
Just in it like a good teammate.
Just in it. Yeah. You need that teammate. And I think, we're both lucky to have that person in our life, because, the person I was dating well before my husband this would have been
a no-go.
It would have been a no-go from the start.
Yeah, he was great. I will say, I think that unfortunate thing that happened is I lost a lot of my friends.
That is hard.
Because, and I really had to learn in the whole process. I sure didn't do it in a day, but
no,
with my age at the time and the age of my kids, like, again, like there's just seasons of life where you get to be very far from this.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
So, I mean, my friends were still like, didn't have kids, out having fun.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
they
No,
don't want to
this
hear
is
about
not-
a Medicaid nursing home.
No, they don't.
know?
Nobody wants to hear about it.
No.
Now
And-
your friends want to hear
Yeah.
about it, but not back then. No way.
It's too much. And, they're having baby showers and having
Oh
all
gosh.
the fun.
Yeah,
and
no.
So it was a real buzzkill
Mhm.
for a lot of them. And just, they're enjoying that season of life. And so, like, my friend that got me in at the hospital downtown, like, she's still ride or die for me.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
I have a childhood friend like that. But, like, all of my college friends, they really just completely fell off.
That's so sad.
And that was hard. But again, like, just as a therapist and trying to talk to myself, like, rather than that being good or bad, that's had to just become a part of my story.
Yeah.
I will say, so in a really unexpected turn of events, my husband's father died during this season.
Oh goodness.
And it was like super sudden. And so that was just really interesting for both him and I, to be doing that. But it also, because we were trying to make that such an integrated part of our story for both of us, like, right, like, instead of being like, this sucks, but like, okay, but it is. So, like, he was honoring my dad. And so I remember, like, how important that was to me the last few hours that we got with my husband's dad. Like, he's done this for me. Like, and so, here my dad is down in this facility, so I'm not going to even get to see him for a while. My kids. So, I mean, to experience something like that at the same time. But I remember being like, like, I'm going to honor my dad as much as I can, my kids. And in that moment, I'm like, all of that is as important as it is. It can't be important right now, because now in this moment, my husband and his dad are that.
Yes, exactly. You have to be able to still say to your dad, I love you and I'm still caring for you, but right now you have to take a back burner.
Yeah, and to the degree that he would have
even known. Exactly.
I don't even
know
if I told him,
but
yes.
he might not have known, and but he just needed to take the back burner because your husband needed that time to be able to live through that and to grieve and to all the things that come after someone has passed away. And then help walk your children through the loss of a grandparent for the first time. Because that's a big one too. That's to talk to children about death is not always easy. When my dad died, like I said, my son was, so it was 2020. So my son was 8 and a half. And of course it's pandemic and all the silliness. And it was literally a week before school started, 3rd grade. So, and it was weird for me because, my dad was in assisted living or in memory care. So it's not like he was with us all the time. And then during COVID, facilities wouldn't let your loved ones leave. Otherwise you couldn't bring them back. And I was like, well, I can't have my dad come visit because I need him to go back. And you couldn't go there. So there was a little bit of, in an 8-year-old mind, that person is sometimes out of sight, out of mind. And so it wasn't as traumatic for him. I mean, I think it was. I think, he takes things on the chin really well. Like he's, I always say he's Teflon. Like things just slide off that child real fast. But he does internalize some things. And that's tough because then you're trying to start your kid in the middle of this craziness with school starting. And what is this going to look like? Because we're still not going in person yet. And all this stuff. And then I'm doing a Zoom meeting with one of his teachers and I just start crying and I'm like, I am so sorry. Like my dad literally died like 5 days ago and we're starting school. And she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so, I was like, no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to like make this about me. It's about my kid. And, but you have to,
but this is what we're doing right now.
This is, and I was like,
who's momming right now.
By the way, and my husband works, I mean, thank God he worked in the department at American Airlines. That was essential even to this day. If his department doesn't exist, the whole airline doesn't exist. But still working for an airline, he had his own stressors and having to work at home and all those kinds of things. And I was like, okay, well, but he was still, hey, I know you need the time to be with your mom or to grieve on your own. And he's like, I've got school, whatever that meant. But so it is nice. You have to be able to say when these things happen.
Yeah.
And my mom was just starting. She was officially diagnosed a year before my dad had passed. So she and I were starting her journey, and then dad passed. And then we're still moving forward with her journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is like you said, you have to say, okay, I'm going to pick it up, and we're going to do all these things. And so my husband was the person for me, just like you were for your husband, to pick it up and say, you take the time for everything you need.
And I think it's healthy. It's not, because it's not that you're compartmentalizing, but you acknowledge, like, you have a shorter bandwidth. You're doing the most with what you have in that moment. And I think when you know the character, for you, of both of your parents, like for me, for my dad, I know how he would have wanted me to honor my husband in that moment. I know how he would have wanted me to be present at this thing with my kids, even though he was alive. And so even though, like, and I just want to make sure, like, even in the way I'm saying it, like, like, you just, that bandwidth is, in human development, you would call it like rollover load. So you're like, okay, like, they'll tell you when you have 2 kids, like, it's not like you love the other one half. In this season of life, it's all half or a third or a quarter. You get this time, you get this time, you get this time. And that is not compartmentalizing, that is survival.
That is,
and you're integrating that into what you do, and you're honoring the legacy that they would want you to have as a parent. And even though it feels like long-term suffering, that is honoring them.
It is. Yeah, it is hard. And then, but during all of this, how were your children taking the changes that came along with either what was going on in the house, or the changes that came along with their grandfather, like, and his changes, like, especially with your son, he was older, so he probably had more of remembering, or more time, and how he took the changes that came along.
I did my absolute best to, like, really put forward to, like, this is our normal and this is our season. So every Friday when my dad was healthy, we would get home from work, and my dad would be like, bye. And he would, like, take my son, and they would leave and go do stuff.
Okay.
And so, like, I would tell Seth, I'd be like, so, Papa used to come over and do this, but this is what we're going to go do for Papa now, because this is normal. And, being that young, it was a lot easier to be like, well, he's sick right now. Because, like you said, their memory lasts this long.
Yeah,
so
it's a blip.
He's sick, so we go visit, and this is what we do. So it was a lot of, like, what's normal is what I tell you is normal.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that. But I will never forget moving him into assisted living. I just had my daughter, and we had this big cart to, like we had mattresses, we had boxes, we had all this stuff, and I had her carrier on top of it.
Oh, goodness.
And I was like, again, this other, like, flash, moment of, like, we're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing this. And that was part of where my friends falling off was so hard, because my dad was so loved by all of my friends.
Yes.
And I say that they enjoyed him so much. I think they would have showed up if they really loved him, but it was hard. So you would think in that season I would have been able to leave my kids with my friends, but it was so hard for them too. So they were just along for all of it. I've got photos, because I remember just being like, I do want to remember this. Like, I don't want to forget this because it's hard. I want to remember it because it's hard. And we did this together. But I have a photo of my dad at the neuropsychologist, and my son is doing this, like, learning app on an iPad. And I have a photo of both of them. And my dad is trying to talk to my son about what it is. And of course, doesn't even understand what the iPad is, much less what he's doing. And so, like, I would find myself just coaching them in conversations.
Yes.
And, like, Seth, you should tell your papa what it is that you're doing. Well, he's like, okay, because he's 3 and he doesn't understand that he doesn't understand.
Right.
So that was kind of unique. And then, like, I would kind of sometimes coach my dad and be like, isn't that cool? And he'd be like, yeah, buddy. And, like, that would be the most he could say.
Yeah.
So, which is exhausting. But I felt like I was honoring my dad by developing a relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And kind of trying to coach him through that. And, I've asked my son since, like, do you have any, it's okay if you say no, do you have any memories of Papa? And there was something he remembers from before he was sick. And so, he doesn't remember anything being bad.
Right.
But he really doesn't remember anything much at all. And all the years where we would have like been in sports and meeting people, like, you know, we're in this community, and my son didn't play Mustang Panther football.
My son does not either.
That's an egregious sin.
Yeah.
So,
or my son doesn't play baseball either. So
okay, that's bad too.
That I think is almost worse.
Well, I wish, like, that is a regret of mine. I will say in this whole thing, I wish I would have figured out a way to do that, but because it shows, you know. But and so it's always this reminder to me of the things we weren't doing, and then I have to remind myself, like, I was doing my best. If I think too hard about some of the facilities that he was in, it will bring me to tears. And I'm like, I was doing my best.
You were doing the absolute best with what you had.
Yes. And so it's, I think, kind of, you know, deciding for your own like personal values and how you're going to honor your parent that's in that situation. And then saying, I will be a divided person, but I am going to honor them as much as I can in the time that I have, in a way that I know would honor them. And that is my best. And I have to tell myself that now, because remember when I was like, I will finish this, and look back and be like, I did have faith.
Yes.
I did trust that this was going to work out. I did. Like, I can't. So I wish there were things about it that could have been different, but I know I trusted all along.
Yes.
I know I did my best all along. I know my best fell short for my dad. I know that. I know my best fell short for my kids. I can still point to things. I know my best fell short for my husband. But together, I would say all those fractions do equal a whole. Right. And that was the most I had.
Yeah. No, I feel that way even sometimes now. I talk about it a lot. Like, making sure I have everything I need for my mom, but then still being a good mom, and all the things that come along with mom guilt, and are you doing it right? Are you making the right choices? All these kinds of things. But then, do you have time for your husband? And he's not feeling like, well, I'm just kind of bringing in a check and like
picking up laundry.
I know, just getting laundry for you while you got a migraine. I mean, because there's sometimes where my husband and I go, every married couple has been through this. I'm like, hey, you are the best roommate I have ever had. I love you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but then when you have those moments to feel that, to say, oh, my husband's a roommate right now. Okay, I need to maybe let one worry go for a little bit, so that I don't feel like my husband's just a roommate that helps pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Absolutely. The week that this all happened initially, my birthday was on the 11th. My dad's big major stroke was on the 12th. And that weekend, my husband had planned this whole thing that weekend.
Oh, goodness.
And I remember being like, I have to go through the motions to like honor this thing he did. And I remember sitting at Del Frisco's in Fort Worth and being like, I don't think I can do this. Like, you know what I mean?
No, it's almost a panic attack. Like, it's anxiety. Of just like,
because I was like, he's there and I'm here. But it was before I had figured out, like, it is okay for me to go celebrate my birthday.
Yes, it is okay.
It is okay for me to go on a date with my roommate. It is okay. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I would really, that would be my advice to people in this season is, don't fight the thing you can't control anyways.
Right.
Let this become an integrated part of your life story in a way that you can look back and say, I probably wasn't enough for all of it, but I know I honored them.
Yes.
I did my best to
honor
them.
best.
And that was my best.
Right. And and sometimes that's your best. And when you're away from it, you're like, oh, I could have done. And hindsight's always 20/20. We all know that. And so it's just, you can't beat yourself up about I should have, or I wish I could have. And, you know, it is hard. It is hard to not say that about yourself, or to say that, you know, like, oh, and I still do it, you know, even if it were 2 days ago, I was like, oh, I should have done blank, whatever, or whatever it is. But you can't make that your life. It can't be the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. It's I always say with my mom, and my mom would say this about my dad, it's like, if we're not laughing at this, then we're crying constantly. So you have to almost come into it, and people who aren't in it might find it callous or crass or insensitive. And I'm like, well, God bless you, but I hope when you will understand, if God forbid this ever happened to you, you will understand this is what's going on, because it is hard, and you have to laugh at the things that make you laugh, because, and it's almost like when someone passes. I always find it's interesting that we sometimes live in a culture that you have to just constantly come across as sad. And I don't think that the people you love want you to constantly think about them in a sad way.
Yeah.
Like, when I talk about my dad, it's always the things I loved about him, and all, he was a tough guy. Don't get me wrong. There were things I think about. I'm like, oh my gosh, my dad would think I'm babying my son sometimes. But, he was tough, but I learned a lot from him. But I still look at all the things that he did to make me laugh. And same with my mom. And, and it was kind of the same way when I was young, when my dad's mother passed away. I was 6 years old when she passed away, but she lived with us when she was 6. So she had ovarian and breast cancer. And so I remember her in her in her own apartment, or in her, she didn't live in an apartment. She had a townhouse. And before she got sick and moved in with us, my memory is the biggest banana split sundaes that literally I get it Friday, and my parents would come get me Sunday, and I would have it for 3 whole days.
Yeah.
Because she just put it back in the freezer. It was just this awesome. Massive boat. But that was her thing, was like food is the way I'm going to give you. But like you said, that your children don't remember the bad, because I was talking to my therapist and we were talking about this, and I said, I knew my grandmother lived with us, but I don't ever remember knowing she was sick.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know. I didn't know at all. I knew she was old, but I never knew she was sick. And then I got horrible chickenpox and the flu. You used to get the flu where it lasted like 3 weeks when we were kids. I don't know where that flu went. It doesn't exist anymore. But when I was a kid, you got a high fever.
It's the pre-Tamiflu flu.
It was the high fever and the stomach thing, but it lasted like 2 weeks. And I had that at the same time. And I just remember that, Grandma Betty has to go live somewhere else because you're so sick. When you're better, she'll come back. But I thought it was just, Grandma Betty just can't get what I have.
Yeah.
I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And then she came back. But I think those are the things that my parents helped me through, that I can't even remember her being sick. Or like you said, Christmas morning. Every kid wants to get up at 6 a.m. and tear everything apart.
Oh man.
And when she lived with us, my parents was like, Grandma Betty's not up yet. Let's give her some time. She's a little slow. And I waited.
Yeah.
And I waited, and they were so proud of me that I waited, because I probably had to wait. I don't know how long I had to wait, but I had to wait. But it's those things that your kids just,
all those little kid Christmases, like, we had to wait until we went to go get Papa.
Yeah.
So there was no like waking up, like having that big moment, like, because we would wake up and we would go get them. But I love what you're saying about your parents, because like, that's what they told you.
Yeah.
And like, now you have all these sweet, precious memories too, even though she did have cancer, even though, whatever those circumstances where your parents were dealing with, she lived with you. That's kind of how they helped you narrate it. And of course I would never, disregard like my kids' feelings, but it is what you tell them.
You help tell them. Yeah.
And I think for me, like, and this is just my own personal perspective on life, like, yes, we did have a very different experience, but for whatever reason, that was the way it was supposed to be.
Right.
And so we have to honor that and make that a part of our story. And there's been one time that my son chose to share this with me, although that makes me think he's felt it far more. But I remember him saying, like, I see these other like kids that get to go on vacations with their grandparents, or they get to go do this stuff, or their grandparents come do this stuff with them. And he's like, I feel like we would have gotten to do that with Papa. And I'm like, no, you're totally good.
All right.
No.
Anybody who's watched my podcast, timers. Sorry.
No. But that's, you know, and I've told him, like, I mean, but that's always going to be true when we lose people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'd say the
and
same.
That's part of us missing him.
Yeah. My son hasn't said that, but he has, I'm sure there are times where he thinks that about my mom.
Yeah.
And, because he's asked me before, he's like, well, I wish I could take her sickness away. And I was like, yes, but then she would be heartbroken and devastated, and that she would do the same thing for you.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's those things, but yeah, it is hard when they compare themselves to their friends who have grandparents that can
come be in the stands.
Yeah, and run around and do all the things. And, before my mother was sick, my son loves penguins. And she said, oh, I'll take you to Antarctica to see the penguins. Well, she can't do that now. Yeah. But she did say, you know, Shelby, I can't take you, but I will promise you that, and she's very pragmatic. She tells us, she's like, well, when I pass away, I will make sure that your mom takes you to see the penguins and I'll pay for it. So I'm sorry, everyone. I get a little weepy eye because it's her way of still saying, I know I promised you that, but I will make sure you get to see those penguins whenever that might be. Yeah. And so, it is hard for the kids who have to live through this, because I think when you're of a certain age, like you said, your friends aren't going through it. I had friends when my dad passed, and I would get, oh, I'm so sorry. It was so hard for me when my grandmother passed away. And I want to say thank you so much, but it is very different when your mother, your father passes away versus your grandparent passing away. It's two different things, and it might hurt, but it's not the same. Right. And so I would say thank you. You know, but then, like I said, when I tell people, oh, I'm my mom's home healthcare helper and I do all this, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, that's amazing. You know, and they're just not in it yet. Yeah. And then our kids are living a different life when it comes to their grandparents that their friends aren't living and don't have to live. Yeah. And so I think it does give our kids an opportunity to really cherish the times that they do get with the ones they love. Absolutely. Across the board. Not even just a grandparent, but if it's a cousin or an aunt, or if they're still living grandparents, then they get to spend the time with those people, and it just makes it more special. Yeah. So,
and I would say too, when I just like something that touched my heart when you said that was when she said, you know, your mom's going to take you to go see the penguins. Like, I hope that's confirmation to you. Right. Like when I say, like, I'm going to honor my dad when I can, I'm going to honor my kids when I can. I hope that's confirmation to you that she feels like you are protecting her legacy and you're going to carry it.
I do. Yes.
You know what I mean?
So, yes.
I just want to affirm that in you because, like, but really, because she is still finding herself in your story. Right. And she knows you're going to carry it. And so even in that moment, your half is still a hold of her. Yeah. Because you're momming, and that's what she wanted for you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's exactly what she wanted for me. And she tells me even to this day, I'm so proud of you. You're so lucky that you have the opportunity to be able to stay home and be with Shelby on a regular basis, where she was the woman who had to work. She wanted to, it's what she did. It's what she loved. But as an executive, she was very busy. And there are times where she has said, I wish I could have had the opportunity to do what you're doing. And she could have, but she would have been miserable. Yeah. She would have been not the person she was supposed to be. Yeah. And I'm being the person I'm supposed to be. But this also now allows me to be able to be the person for her that she needs. Yeah. And it's very special to be in those situations. And you know, for you to be able to have two littles and juggle a job and a husband, all of it. I mean, I'm sure it was not easy for you, because I mean, but it's the person who you are now. Yeah. And
I know who my dad worked to make an opportunity for me to be. So yeah. Absolutely.
I think it's those special things. Like I said, it's finding those things that you don't always think about when it comes to your parents.
Yeah.
Until they've been sick or you've had to take care of them. You know, it's sad when your parent gets older and they might just pass away in their sleep. And that's a different feeling.
Mm-hmm. That was my husband's loss. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't in the sleep, but it was, within 24 hours. Yes. It was so different.
Right.
And he said, I look at what's happening with you and what's just happened to me. And he said, I still don't know how you're doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. My husband says the same thing. He said, I don't know how you do it every day. And I do have very close friends who say this. They're like, I don't know how you do this. Yeah. You do it every day. I was like, and I always tell people, and maybe it's my mom and me, that, you know, she is and was very much like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah. You soldier on, and you do what you're supposed to do, and you can talk about it later. But in that moment is when you just have to just soldier on, stiff upper lip, and just move forward. Yeah. And then you can dwell on it, and you can feel upset and have all your emotions later, but you just have to dig in and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
this was, I think it was this Father's Day, this June. My dad passed in 2016, and you had mentioned this earlier. There's this season that when you're in this season, it's like they're like, for you, your mom, like they're my mom, but they're not my mom, but they are my mom. But yes, you know, and so I went through that, and it's so hard. And so that was 2016 when he passed, December 2016. And this summer, June 2024, it was this real epiphany for me where I was like, I'm not going to remember him with vascular dementia anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But I remember too, I was like, but he's also not just my dad, because now I'm watching my son become a young man, and I'm, you know, watching my husband, and I had made like a social media post because I was like, he's not my sick dad anymore.
Right.
This was somebody's son.
Yeah.
This is a college athlete. This is a man who fell in love and started a family.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, that's how long it took me to fully transition back to, I've decided who this person's going to be in my life.
Right.
Now. And what an honor that I got him for this long as a dad. Because he also had this whole other life.
Yes, I know.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I was like, I am so blessed and lucky.
Yeah.
And that was really, really shitty season.
Yeah.
And I am so blessed.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed. And it was so hard. But we did it. And I think he would be proud.
He is proud.
You know.
I think there's no if. Yeah. He's proud of you.
And it's.
Yeah. I think I would say people would say that about my dad too. They're like, he's proud of you. He would do that. He was everything that you're doing for your mother and stepping up and being the wife and daughter and mother to my son. And, you know, you can't always look back at the what ifs. Like, oh, I wish he could have lived longer to see. Yeah. But we got him for what we had him for, and we make the best of it.
Yeah. And that's what you would want your son to be able to say. You'd be like, you did your best.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what they'd say. That. I know.
Like, I tell my son all the time, you did your best, baby. Good job. Yeah. You know, because my son is very tough on himself. He has a perfectionist personality. So he's a little hard on himself. And I'm like, no, you did your best job, baby.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of things. So
they'll watch this one day. Just do your best.
Yeah.
That's all it.
Just do your best. Yes. I promise you, do your best. It's from everybody out there. Do your best. I know you will. Okay. So I just want to say thank you for your time. And, but the song of the week is going to be brought to us by Stephanie.
Yes. Okay. I really debated, but, my dad has since passed. But I think this song really captures like the story and the nostalgia of how I feel even about this season.
Yes.
So Pink Skies by Zach Bryan.
Oh, how lovely. I'll have to, I don't know it.
Okay.
But I will look it up. But yeah, so Pink Skies, by Zach Bryan, and I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I want to see how it
Mm-hmm.
all encompasses everything that you've said so far. So, fun. This is going to be exciting. I got a new song, guys. I've never done. I always like something new. Yeah. So, but I just want to say thank you again.
Yeah.
And for all of you out there, just you're doing your best, and don't compartmentalize everything. But yeah, so. Yeah. And we'll be out there. So I'll see you again next week, guys. I love you all. Have a great week. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Sandwich Stories. I really hope you learned some new things and enjoyed it. If you did, tell a friend, tell your mom, tell your sister, tell your dad, tell everybody you know to also listen. Maybe they'll learn some new things, how to help each other out, and find us at Sandwich Stories Podcast. Thanks so much.